Hey, good morning, World History Crew. This is Mr. Lamond, and we're going to talk about a quick review on 9.1, American Revolution. Why did the colonies fight to remove British rule? So why was it too late to apologize? It's too late. And how were they able to do it? So let's break this down into a quick review, establishing why we wanted to fight and how we won the fight. First up, we want to talk about the beginning of the American colonies. So, because there's a huge ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, in between England, Europe, and the 13 colonies, we were kind of left over here on our own. And what's the two-word phrase for us not having anybody to tell us what to do? There it is in the middle of the page, salutary neglect. All right, that kind of let us do our own thing. Because we had to do our own thing, we learned what other two-word phrase where you figure out your own rules? That's self-government. And the great example of that, if you remember, where we talked about the Mayflower Compact, where the guys, the Pilgrims that landed in Boston, got together and wrote their own rules. And why did they write their own rules? Because they had to, because England was on the other side of the Atlantic. So basically, the colonies begin running the show all by themselves, doing what they're supposed to do, taking care of themselves with self-government. Two things change that relationship. First up, mercantilism. The British realized, you know what? The richer we are, the more powerful we are. So instead of letting the colonies make up their own rules about trade and trade with whoever they want, now the British start telling them, well, you got to put this kind of thing on this ship, and you got to pay this tax, and you're only allowed to trade with these people. They kind of get like possessive, like you're not allowed to play with those people because you're my friend and I don't like those people. And so they get all mercantilistic, possessive. And then on the other hand, they have to fight a war to save our butts. In Europe, they called it the 7 Years' War, but in the colonies, French and Indian War. And we don't spend a lot of time talking about that war, but suffice to say the British help us win, which is why we don't speak French. But as a result, they're in debt. Everybody goes in debt to fight a war, and how does a government get out of debt? It sounds like flax and has to do with money. Tax, absolutely. So the Stamp Act is going to get passed as an example of a tax that we have to pay. Well, we get it. We should help pay for the war, so we're not really against taxation. We're against, say it with me now, no taxation without representation. So we start getting a little frustrated, and we start to protest and boycott. Maybe we throw a little bit of tea in the harbor. Just make it a big cup of tea, right? Just for a party, Boston Tea Party. And then the British have to send over troops, and they quarter them in our homes, and that frustrates us. And, then we kind of bump into each other, and we don't like each other. And then maybe the British troops massacre some of our guys in Boston. Ooh, we don't like that very much. And so we're kind of bumping into each other, and we don't like each other. We actually fight a battle at Lexington and Concord, shot heard round the world. But we're still not at war yet. We still haven't declared our independence. We still haven't figured out that we really don't want to be British anymore. It's not too late to apologize. It's not till Thomas Paine writes his book, Common Sense, that we start to realize, man, it's just not right what these guys are doing to us. Maybe we're grown up. We don't need mama anymore. Maybe we're not revolving around England like we used to. And it's pretty soon after Common Sense that some fellows get together led by Thomas Jefferson and write the Declaration of Independence. Now we're at war. And basically, war for America is summed up by this strategy: don't lose. And even though George Washington was a phenomenal leader of men, he wasn't so great at the whole general stuff. But he was able to keep the military together, won a couple small battles, crossed the Delaware River on Christmas Eve to knock out those Germans. But mostly what he focused on and did well was he kept us together. He kept us together at Valley Forge in the snow. He kept us together losing battles here and there. The big event was when we won at Saratoga, when we were able to defeat a large British army, surround them, cause them to surrender in upstate New York. And as a result of this, one of England's old enemies decides to join our team. Yes, that's right, France, back into it. And they decide, man, those Americans aren't quite as sorry as we thought they were. Maybe we could help them, because if we win, we'll get some stuff from the British. So the French start fighting. And because France is fighting, now Britain has to take most of their attention away from the American Revolution and turn it to the French. And the last but not least, the last key event was when the war moves to the south, the Americans are able to win a couple battles. We're starting to get a little more well-trained, a little smarter. And the key is we trap and surround Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia, and force him to surrender. So after the war, we try a government called the Articles of Confederation. And what's the adjective for the Articles of Confederation? It's too weak. Because the last thing we want to do is have a strong government, because a strong government would be like this guy, the guy we just left. Well, the Articles of Confederation is so weak that it can't control America well enough. And there's a few random little moments where people kind of get scared that our government's not good enough, like Shays' Rebellion. And it freaks people out enough that even some of Washington's own men tried to make him a king. So from King George to King George. But Washington, as great a man as he is, steps away from that and says, nope, not going to do it. Order of Cincinnatus, I'm walking away. And so instead of having a king, we have a constitutional convention. And at the constitutional convention, all these guys get together and say, man, all those Enlightenment ideas that Mr. Lamont taught his students, those would be a great way for us to start a government. Montesquieu and Diderot and Voltaire. Didn't the English have a Bill of Rights? Man, we could try some of that too. And let's separate powers and let's have popular sovereignty like the Greeks did. And basically, they just sat in my class, figured out what good government was, and wrote it up. And that's the government we still have today, which is why we're considered a successful revolution, as opposed to these guys. That's the end of the review. You can be looking for a 9.2 review to follow as you get ready for your Unit 9 test at the end of the week.